watching online as well. One of the topics that I know is on everybody's mind these days, and has been for a while, is teen violence. So next week, I want to announce that I'm taking part in a forum to tackle this issue. This is one of the things that this office is doing. We're working alongside Chandler Police to put on this free event in the East Valley. And at this event, we're going to discuss what trends we're seeing and how we can work together as a community, because that's what it's going to take to protect our kids. So it is Wednesday, August the 27th, so a week from yesterday, at 6 p.m., should go to about 8 p.m., at the Chandler Public Safety Training Center. And all of this information is going to be posted on MCAO's Facebook and Instagram. So parents, teens, people who work with kids, I hope you'll join us. I have asked representatives from the Preston Lord Foundation to be there. They've agreed to do that. So, please make it a point to cover this, and also if you're watching, to come. So with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Hi, County Attorney, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I just have a general question. We've obviously covered extensively the Preston Lord situation over the past couple of days. We've extensively covered the awful situation at Maryvale High School.
Yeah.
There's another incident that your office is prosecuting where a 13-year-old had a firearm used in an alleged robbery in an offer-up situation. Mm-hmm. Just generally, do you think teens in the Valley are okay? That they're doing okay?
No. What we have seen in general teen criminal behavior, and I mean, I've looked at the charts as recently as yesterday, is it was higher, general criminality was higher prior to the pandemic, and it dipped, and now it's on its way back up again, but it's not quite to where it was before the pandemic. But that's not true if you pull out violence statistics. If you look solely at violence statistics, not only across Maricopa County, but Arizona and the nation, you've just seen a steady trend upwards. And it is of great concern to me. Obviously, you mentioned the Maryvale High School, the 13-year-old with the gun. We have to get a handle on this. And I think, obviously this forum is just one step toward that. Preston Lord law that we sought passage from the legislature and of course the governor signed was another step, but there's a lot more that has to be done. Mm-hmm. And I think some of that is looking at the juvenile justice system. I fully support that being rehabilitative in nature instead of punitive, but then let's rehabilitate. Let's make it work. Let's do it based on, the modern kid, not a kid of yesteryear. Let's base it on research and let's get it done, because we're not doing any kindness to them to slap them on the wrist, only to have them go into adult court later on in their life, whether it be as a juvenile or as an adult.
I know you may deliver a little bit of this next Wednesday, but is there a message you would give to parents at home who may have teens at home, mm-hmm. who may see a little bit of signs of this, that there may be acting out and something that lends itself to potential criminal activity? Is there a message you would give to them?
Yeah, I mean, don't bury your head in the sand. And government, and I said this morning, I was at another function, government is a poor substitute for the family. And the family, when they see those early warning signs, seek help, get resources for your kid, because you're ignoring it doesn't make it go away, and eventually it's going to really be problematic. I've said this before about the Preston Lord case. It is an unspeakable tragedy what happened to Preston and what his family is going through. But also, it weighs on me that 7 young men are now indicted. One has pled, but are under indictment for first-degree murder. And I'm not saying that wasn't appropriate based on what they did, but it is still a tragedy.
Thank you.
Speaking of the Maryvale High School stabbing,
mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little about the decision to charge the suspect as an adult? What factors go into that, and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to look at there. One is when a juvenile is 15 or older, and of course this juvenile that we're looking at was 16, almost 17 years old, there are certain offenses, including murder, that are mandatory direct files. So that's not really a decision, that's the law. But there are other cases that we look at to decide whether this is somebody that should be filed in discretionarily into adult court. And three of the things that I look at for that would be person's age. Obviously, the older, I'm going to look at their juvenile history or criminal history, and then I'm also going to look at the nature of the offense. And so all of those play a factor in that kind of decision, but in this situation, it's the crime itself and his age that made that decision.
How do you weigh that against, that you mentioned juvenile justice system, rehabilitating someone, especially younger folks? How do you weigh that in ultimately making the decision?
I'll tell you, it weighs heavily because, I understand the impact of it on a young person's life. But again, if we're looking at a very serious offense, I also have to look at what happened to the victim. I have to look at keeping the community safe. And so those are all things that I take into account.
Speaking of the Rebecca Baptiste case, obviously there were no charges that or cases that came to your office, but I wonder, in your experience dealing with DCS, sort of your thoughts on the case, maybe reforms that DCS needs to make, how your office is looking at things.
Yeah, reading and seeing about that case it breaks my heart, as you know. I worked these cases for like 25 years. So I know what this looks like. And it's an outrage. One thing that I would caution, though, is, before we start making changes, stepping in and tearing things down, we really need to get to the bottom of what happened. And when I say that, I'm not talking about what happened to Rebecca. I know what happened to Rebecca. Like I said, I know what that looks like. I'm talking about what information came in, who was it given to, what steps did they take. I'm talking a step-by-step analysis of what happened and what the breakdown was here. And it's really only then, once we have that thorough understanding of where the breakdown was, that we can start to fix it. I don't want to start to fix something when I don't know exactly what was broken. Clearly something was broken.
Hi there, Rachel Lauren Clark, Fox 10. Thank you as always for having us here today. We always appreciate it. First question I have in regards to the tragedy that happened at Maryvale High. Going through the probable cause report, we see some facts that could cause an inference for premeditation. For example, the suspect sitting where he normally wouldn't sit, right next to the victim. We also saw some witnesses who overheard a plan for this attack. Right now we have second-degree murder charges, but could we expect first-degree murder charges in this case in the future?
That's what was submitted to our office, was second-degree murder, but we always keep an eye open for that. And the things that you point out are absolutely factors that we would look at. But you also have to look at premeditated to do what? To attack or to kill. And so those are just some other factors that we have to take a look at as well. But nothing's off the table. And even after charges are filed and going forward, if new information is developed, we can always go back and take a second look at it as well.
Switching gears here to another tragedy that happened in our community with Zariah and Jarrell Davis, the man who's currently facing charges as well. There was a 2007 case that we found that he was also involved with another underage girl. I don't know if you had a chance to look through the file. I know you obviously weren't county attorney at that point, but this ended up in a parole, and we've just had some questions over just why that was the case when we're talking about a young child that was also impregnated.
It ended up in, I think it was probation.
Yes.
Okay. I'd have to look at the details of that. I haven't read it. What I can tell you is, obviously back then we were dealing with two individuals who were much closer in age than we're dealing with right now. So that could have been a factor. I'm speculating here. But that would be just sort of off the top of my head, my thought.
And this also was back in 2007. So, this was a while ago
So
as well.
18 years or younger, yes.
Yes. And also with that case, have you looked at the possibility of other charges, any indication to the county's office that there was a trafficking going on of younger girls, for example?
We have looked at a number of things related to this in addition to the homicide that you're aware of, and all of that is under review at this time. So yes, I'm aware of what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Hello, I wanted to ask you about the task force that you're working on with Senator Karen Warner
Uh-huh.
in regards to, the Rebecca Baptiste case and just the child abuse protocols within the state. I wanted to ask, I know you sat down with the senator recently. What were some of the biggest weaknesses that you noticed within the tools and the questionnaire that currently exists for reporting those cases?
Well, keep in mind, this was a very preliminary discussion that she and I had. Obviously, really, the discussion was, we have to get to the bottom of this. So we're way too early on. These are great questions. I mean, but we're way too early on to say where the failure was. What I can say is this, in terms of looking at this case, one of the things that I'm going to look at personally is the process of getting it through the hotline process and then into the joint investigation as criminal conduct process, how that went, did it go? And that's one of my inquiries that I'm going to be making.
Overall, what do you hope to accomplish, hope to see this task force accomplish as it starts its work and work with the Joint Oversight Committee and ultimately presents those recommendations to the legislature?
Well, it's going to be up to Senator Warner what to do with the findings of the task force, but my personal hope is to get a very deep dive into these situations and look and see what happened, what needs to be addressed, what needs to be fixed. Clearly, something has to be fixed.
Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey.
With Justice of the Peace Kissel ruling in the ASU Gaza protesters case, the defense met its burden in the anti-SLAPP motion. I have two questions. The first one is, I was curious if you can explain why the office wasn't or didn't pursue a plea deal for the protesters in this one.
Well, actually, that's incorrect. 3 individuals out of the 68 who have been charged with Class 3 misdemeanor trespass have entered into a plea deal. Other offers have been made. I'm not going to go into the details of that because those are pending. So that's not actually accurate.
Got it, I read that somewhere. Thanks for clarifying. And the other question is, with that ruling, do you intend to challenge the ruling, and are you ready to testify if it comes to that?
We're proceeding to get ready for it. We are, looking at the details of the ruling that the Justice of the Peace made. And if we need to put more on the record, we will. If I need to testify, I will.
Thank you.
Hi, a number of readers have asked why the alleged stabber for the Maryvale case wasn't charged with first-degree murder. I know that you've already addressed that, it's early and everything's on the table.
So I don't have to object, asked, and answered then?
Right, exactly.
Gotcha,
But
okay.
I was wondering if you could at least give sort of a layman's description of what your office needs to meet to see reasonable likelihood of conviction in a first-degree murder case versus a second-degree murder case, not in relating to this particular case necessarily.
Yeah, in general, I mean, the statute for first-degree murder, not talking about felony murder, I'm talking about premeditated first-degree murder, requires that there is an intentional knowing desire to kill and that it was thought about in advance. So we're going to be looking for evidence that supports that a jury of 12 people would accept unanimously beyond a reasonable doubt. So whatever that entails is that what we're going to be looking for. But again, nothing's off the table at this point. We're going to be looking at it. We're very young in this case, and so additional information could come in that we'll reconsider. But that was what was submitted to us by the police department.
Gotcha. And then switching gears to a probably much older case, I know with Cujo Young, his 2020 armed robbery case, I believe got pushed back to at least 2026.
Mhm.
I think he initially indicated that he wanted to represent Peterson himself, and then now has new counsel and wishes to stay with that counsel, and was just wondering if you had any thoughts on how long this case has been going on, and the fact that, you know, we're going now almost 6 years into a case that, you know, is just essentially 2 charges of armed robbery and attempted armed robbery.
Yeah, I know that we responded to that issue in writing, and so that pretty much sets forth my office's position on that. What I can say is that as somebody who has, you know, been a practicing prosecutor for decades, sometimes the length it takes to get a case to trial is extremely frustrating. And, you know, I would, it's frustrating for the victims, and it's certainly frustrating for the prosecution.
And my last question is, I know Pinal County Attorney Brad Miller has offered to investigate Senator Annalise Ortiz over social media posts she made about the location of ICE agents and warning people to stay away, and that I believe Senate President Warren Peterson has basically referred the case to federal officials, but was just wondering what your thoughts are on potentially investigating someone over tweets like that or social media posts like that, and if you would be interested or willing to make a similar offer to the legislature about that issue.
Well, I think Senator Peterson had it exactly right. These are federal agents, and I think a federal agency should investigate if they're going to. My understanding is that that's what's happening. So I think Senator Peterson had the correct venue. And so based on that, no, I don't intend to make a similar offer.
Thank you.
You sure? Okay. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good afternoon, everybody.